About 180 years ago, Madame Delphine and her husband, Dr. Louis LaLaurie, bought a mansion on 1140 Royal Street in 1831. In fact, the mansion was so big there were numerous slaves that come and go. It is told that there was a total of 54 slaves in the household when the LaLauries lived there. The LaLaurie House was so fine. The couple hosted balls and get-togethers from people all over New Orleans. Those who were invited never stopped talking about it because it was so beautiful. This family was definitely high class. In 1833, rumors began to fly around the city, the cruel treatment Madame Delphine gives to her slaves. There are accounts of hearing slaves scream as she beats them. Madame Delphine chased a slave girl who ran up on the roof and jumped to her death. She was secretly buried in a well at night. Madame was fined and had all her slaves removed. She convinced several of her relatives to buy her slaves in the slave auctions. On April 10, 1834, 1140 Royal Street caught fire. The fire was ignited by the slave cook who was chained to the stove. It records that she wanted to end her life rather than bend to every need of her owner. The civilians looked through the house. They walked up to the attic and found a barred door. Once they opened the door, they saw 7 slaves tortured. It was repulsive. The slaves were in critical condition. Some slaves were chained to the wall with their limbs stretched to the extremity of the other. A slave was shoved into a dog-like cage with their arms and legs broken in an uncomfortable position. A slave had their mouth sewn shut with animal feces stuffed inside. One slave was laying on a table with their stomach slit open with their intestines wrapped around their waist. A slave had a deep hole in the head with worms trying to escape. Blood was everywhere. There were even organs laying lifelessly in pots. This outraged the cities. The next day, the mystery behind Madame Delphine LaLaurie's cruelty to the slaves is finally revealed in the New Orleans Bee. The mutilated slaves were also brought to be shown at prisons. They were shown to the prisoners as an example for if they tried to escape, these are the consequences that will happen. Riots of people began to form around their house. The LaLaurie family fled away in a carriage to escape the destruction. The mob ransacked the house out of disgust and hatred. Some say Madame Delphine fled to Paris and passed away on December 7, 1842. People have claimed that the LaLaurie House is haunted and that no one can stay there long. They claim to hear screams of agony coming from inside the house. Apparitions of slaves have appeared walking on the balconies and yards of the lot. People who have stayed in the house because of nowhere else to stay have never been heard of again. A man bought the LaLaurie House in 1837 after it was renovated from destruction. The man only stayed for 3 months before he left because he heard strange noises throughout the house. He tried leasing the rooms to guests, but no one dared stay in the mansion. The house was later abandoned. After the Civil War, it was turned into a girls' integrated high school for girls of a lower district. The White League forced the black girls to leave the school, but later on it became an all-black school for girls. This lasted for a year, and the house was once again abandoned. The house became a very conservatory of music and fashionable dancing school. It was a well-known school with a great reputation. The local newspaper printed an accusation of the teacher for having improper ties with female students. He was later shunned and the school ceased to exist. Jules Vigny dies in the house in 1892. The LaLaurie House was now used to house immigrants, but after some time, the immigrants refused to stay there because of the strange noises and apparitions in the house. They were too afraid. A guy used the house as an apartment, and it was recorded that he was attacked by a ghost of a slave that beat him to the ground. The man gave the ghost one last look before the ghost vanished abruptly.
When you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse, and the tears come streaming down your face,